listening to the First City Lax podcast, brought to you every week from the Florida Panhandle. Coach John and Coach JP explore the best and worst of lacrosse on the Gulf Coast, so strap your helmets on and let's go.
And welcome back to First City Lacrosse. I am your host, Coach John, as always with my host, Coach JP. JP, welcome back. Good to have you back, brother.
Good to be back. Greetings.
Yep. And we are joined once again by our good friend and fellow coach, Coach Casey out of Louisiana. Casey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you much. Happy Sunday, boys.
Absolutely. Well, by the time everyone listens to this, it'll be Monday or later. Right. Yeah, but we are recording this on a Sunday, so that's important. And we have a very special guest with us today. You guys are going to really get a kick out of this one. This is going to be some good stuff and good information for all of our players looking to play at the next level. Coach Rashad Devoe. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That's it.
Awesome. Coach Rashad, welcome to the podcast. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, sir.
Well, I've been in this game for a long time, coaching. This is going on my 20th year. Division 1, 2, 3, head coach at all the levels, club team, high school coaching, the non-hotbed areas, so kind of understand that a little bit. So I've been doing this a long time.
Awesome. That is good. Now, did you play lacrosse growing up, or did you kind of fall into it like some of the rest of us?
So actually, it was basketball.
Okay.
I played college basketball in Rochester, New York. And when I got done playing basketball, I kind of like hated practices, hated anything to do with basketball. And a good friend of mine, Tim Sudan, who is Mr. Everything with the Rochester Nighthawks back in the day, and the Rattlers, and he's now in the PLL. Is he still in the PLL? I have to double check that. But but he took me under his wing and said, "Hey man, come over here to lacrosse," and I fell in love. Found similarities to basketball, and
I love that. And I gotta say that's so indicative, and maybe not indicative is the wrong word. JP, what word am I looking for here? It's like we see that a lot. A lot of our players will transition from one sport, soccer, basketball, even baseball, and they just pick up a lacrosse stick, and then from there on, it's lacrosse. After that,
then it turns into either passion or obsession.
Yeah,
or completely.
And
obsessed.
I'll tell you, John, we've touched on it on the other episodes before, but Rashad comes to us with one of the greatest blessings a lacrosse coach can have. And I'm only going to say this so I stay on her good side because I know I'm her favorite, but he has the quintessential coach's wife. Rashad has been supported in every single way by the love of his life. Amy, you mean there's no one better to be a coach's wife in this world. And she needs to get her flowers on the early set of this episode. Not just because I need to stay on her good side, but because Rashad, he needs to pop her up on it.
No, she has been. She, like, everybody slept in the house. All the coaches slept on the couches.
Absolutely.
Made food for the kids, everything. I actually remember probably early on in this when I used to help work T99, which is the Texas recruiting camp, Texas Top 99. And my job was, and this was a long time ago, so no one gets in trouble. But my job was to make sure the college coaches didn't get arrested.
That's still kind of important.
It's very important.
My job, when they all went out, made sure they got home, and made sure they had a good time, and got home.
And made sure they were there at the 7:45 Saturday pre-coaches meeting.
Yeah.
That's right.
And one day I just didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to go out today. I don't want to do this. And she's like, you want to be a college coach, right? And I was like, yeah. She's like, get to it.
Get out there, big boy. Get out there, big boy.
Priorities.
Yeah. And man, we talked about the support you need, but I mean, Rashad has moved from Texas to Wisconsin to the Northeast and everywhere in between. And, he kind of comes home and he texts me, he goes, I'm about to talk to Amy. And sure enough, he's like, hey, this is the opportunity. This is where we're headed, or we're going to Maine or wherever. And she's like, let's make it work. And, it takes, we've got a lot of fans that are growing in this thing and people that want to become coaches. And I'm starting to get messages, believe it or not. And they're like, how serious are you about, having a wife that supports your coaching dream? And I tell them it's the most serious thing short of being here for our kids and being really good examples. Having a wife, a spouse, a partner that supports you in your coaching dream, whether you're on the men's side, the women's side, high school, youth, college, whatever. If you don't have that partner that gets it, it's a tougher road. And when I tell you that I'm blessed to have Rashad as an example and his wife as an example for my own wife and some of my buddies I've been able to kind of in turn mentor, it's the greatest thing in the world, and she's one of the best, and I wish everyone could have an Amy.
No.
Yeah, she put her foot down
She
lately.
put her foot down. So this is enough.
Well, 2 more years, my son, then we can go, but
Okay. Okay.
But there's no more moving.
All right, Rashad. So tell us all a little bit about. So you got started with lacrosse in college. Then you started. What position did you play, and how did your career sort of progress? Can you take us through sort of a few minutes of what that looked like for you?
So I got started after college, literally after I graduated. Like I said, I got working with the Rochester Nighthawks, doing strength conditioning with them. And I hate doing this because I'm going to age myself, but that was 1996, 7. I was with the Rochester Nighthawks and worked with them. Um, Moved down to Philadelphia, worked with some of the guys from the Philadelphia Wings. And then about 2005, 6, moved to Texas and started working with different teams and just saw that they needed good coaching. Like Casey said, there's Coach Purcell there, Coach Flick, Coach Duran, Coach McGibbon, who's passed, but he was great, Coach Monk. So there were some really good people down there, but it was growing so much that they just needed extra hands on, and I jumped in on the coaching side and got the itch and just fell in love with it even
Nice.
more.
And then once you started coaching, what did it look like for you? Like did you fall right into a head coaching job, or you said you were strength and conditioning at first, and then what does that sort of look like? Just a Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, I was still doing conditioning and coaching, and then a friend of mine, Ryan Baldwin, who's coach at Notre Dame now. He's been everywhere and he's been amazing. He told me can't have one foot on one side, one foot in the other. If you want to coach, you're a coach. If you want to be a strength coach, you're a strength coach. Which one do you want to be? So I went all into the coaching side. And my first head coaching job, I was blessed with great talent. Plano West, they had great talent. I had no clue what I was doing. They carried me. They carried me. I had no clue what I was doing. And then fortunately got a chance to go to, which is Jesuit Preparatory School. They changed the name. Was it Jesuit Preparatory School in Dallas? That was Jesuit. With Chris Saran, and I went through boot camp. It was boot camp. And so Chris Saran is the MVP of the 93 Final Four, I believe, for Syracuse. Great goalie, All-American team, knows offense, knows defense, knows everything. And he took me under his wing and just boot camp. We'd be there an hour before going over X's and O's. Hour after going over X's and O's. Started out JV defense and then moved up to varsity defense. And then in the summer, he'd make me do the offense for the club team. So he gave me the whole well-rounded spiel. And so when I got to college, it's like everything that I've done at Jesuit, I'm still doing now, and it still works. So why change it? It's got me this far.
That's right. Okay. And then you continued coaching since then. Like you never really took your foot off the gas.
No, I didn't stop. I'm a little bit too ambitious for my own good. Sometimes I think. Again, speaking of my wife, we had that discussion of that drive. Went to Southwestern with Bill Bowman, who's a phenomenal coach in person. Loved it there. And that's a great, beautiful school, great people. From there, moved up to Maine. Never thought I would be in Maine. Actually worked at Skidmore for a day. And then the coach told me, hey, we're going up to Maine. Technically, I worked at Skidmore for a day.
One day.
And Jack Sandler, who was the coach at Colby College when I went to Maine, he passed away at a young age, 30, I think what, 35 now? It was 35.
Gosh.
He passed away living in large part. But he was mentoring me to be a head coach. He knew. So he had a plan. He was like, hey, you're gonna go and be a head coach because you can't be a head. Schools don't know that you can be a head coach until you're a head coach. That was his thing. So you have to take a head coaching job somewhere to be able to come back here and be a head coach here. And he laid out a whole plan that worked to perfection. So when I came back to the Northeast, everything worked perfect. So I always say that Jack Sandler was the one who gave me the blueprint of how to steer my career.
And that led you along the way to where you're at now, Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart.
Division
Love
One.
it.
Yeah.
Division One. Love it. Great coaching staff, Coach Bosty, Coach Doc, Coach Leeds. We have so much fun. The kids are amazing. First time I met all the kids, they were just so inviting. Like you usually don't like. There's some people that want to look at you and see, hey, what's this guy going to do for me? It was like, nope, this is our this is our culture. You don't know anything about this place. We're going to bring you in and show you. Just such great young men. And the intensity and the intensity and the level of care and tenacity that they put into practice was something that um, I thought was amazing.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's people always ask me like hey, difference in D1 or D2 or D3 or things like that. So again, I've been fortunate to coach high level D3, high level D2, D1. I was at Naval Academy Prep School. Got a chance to be at the Naval Academy and watch how those guys went after it, and kind of in the same vein, they just don't take a minute off in practice. Everything is full speed, no jogging. Every pass it may be wild, but it's thrown at 100 miles an hour. The kid may run into a triple team, but he's running into it 100 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was just intense. It wasn't for one day. It was consistent. And that's what I really love about those guys. And you don't have to ask them to do that. That's just their motor. That's their gear.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something I think is a little different than most places. Just the intensity and the tenacity that they attack practice.
That's cool. And I think that's exactly what players need to hear. That's what their parents also need to hear. As a coaching staff, we're going to dig more into this. I think at least I want to learn a little bit more about it. But learning how to motivate a player and to get that player to show up and perform in practice, because everyone on the podcast here, we all know that you're going to play the way you practice. If you don't practice at 100%, if you practice and you're only giving 50%, well, your performance during the game is going to reflect that. So I think, JP, make sure we come back to this, please, because I definitely want to hit this topic again. There's some other things we want to talk about. Now, God, before we get too much further, JP and I are putting a list together, and we ask a couple of rapid fire questions to all of our guests. So you ready for a couple of quick ones?
Yeah, what you got?
All right. So the first one is, do you have a favorite podcast, book, YouTube show, TV show, anything that you sort of like, you just cling to, other than the First City Lacrosse podcast?
Well, off mic, we were discussing this a little bit. I I don't actually watch TV really. I watch Disney YouTubers.
Okay.
So going back to me being a Disney adult,
Yeah.
A large Disney adult.
Hey, man, if you love it, you love it, right?
Oh, he loves it.
so I come home and sit down after a long day, watch a couple Disney YouTubes, and relax, and then finish the day.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be honest, nobody has ever said that on the podcast before.
So I am a huge. It's kind of funny. Like I know people when Carson Beck said he doesn't watch football. Do you guys remember when he said that?
Yeah.
And people got mad at him. I'm like that. I don't watch lacrosse unless it's our team practice or who we're playing that
Mhm.
week because I'll watch
He's
it and
he's telling
watching
the
it.
truth. I will text him and be like, "Oh my God, are you watching this right now?" And he's like, "Dude, no, I'm watching film or I'm hanging out." It's hilarious to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll coach it, it'll get too much, and I'll be like, "Oh." So
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
get what Carson was saying.
Yeah, you got to have boundaries.
he does. Well, JP,
Yeah.
if you just like upload this and maybe just hashtag some Disney hashtags, I bet our follows go like this because
Yep,
across
let me get my D1 through D3 joke. Cool.
the D1
Yeah.
Disney. Here we go.
Disney 1 through 3.
There it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Okay. Second rapid fire, and then I'll let you off the hook after this one. You got a favorite player, coach, role model, official, anybody like that you sort of model your behavior? And it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be even a coach. Doesn't have to be a lacrosse player. Doesn't just. Is there anybody you sort of model your style or your behavior at?
Way too many. My favorite people and coaches in the world, Jack Sandler, who passed
Mm-hmm.
away. He never talked across in the office, and he could tell the kids to run through a brick wall, no question, they would run through a wall. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Jack Sandler and Peter Lasagna, former coach at
Oh
Bates,
yeah.
just the most. You could be screwing up, like the guys could be screwing up the biggest drill ever, and he would just be like, "Okay, gentlemen, so what did we learn?" Like he's just so calm and cool. He's like, "Okay, so now let's try to do it this way." He
Yeah.
like where I'm like, that's why I'm balled down. Uh, so Peter Lasagna and Jack Sandler, the two most influential coaches in my life, and then player wise, the Bratton brothers to me are just they were just everything. They were amazing. So I still don't think we've seen any of the athleticism that they've brought. Maybe Pat Spencer, but
Mm.
other than that, the Brattons just changed everything for me.
Yeah. There's always going to be those handful of players, or sometimes it's just an individual player that is an absolute breakout, once in a lifetime type thing that changes the team, changes the game, changes everything, just by showing up. So that's cool, man. JP, did I miss any? We got the two big ones.
Yeah, that's two big ones. That's different answers too.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always
Love
different
it.
answers, so that's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, what I wanted to get into for this episode, we talked a little bit before we hit the record button here, and the two things I really want to hit on is first, so how do we, as coaches at the high school level, and how do the players at the high school level move into that upper level of lacrosse, that college D1, D2, D3, and so for example, my boys both play MCLA, and there are some teams that are very, very competitive there, and there are others that are just, it's literally like just a club thing for them. So with that in mind, like, what do you tell players, and how do you attract players to your program?
So I'll speak in general. I'll just give like a wide range, even in
Mm-hmm.
not just our program. I think there are so many good options that people shouldn't be D1 focused. Um, there again, like I said, I coached the Ryan Gambit, and my Beloit Concordia, Wisconsin game was just as intense as the game we had Siena yesterday, right? It just depends on where you're at. Um, so I think a lot of times we get so caught up with what, as parents, what I can tell people at the dinner table, right? What I can tell people at the dinner table. My son goes here. My son goes here. Um, where I could give you the name of 15 D3 schools that you may not have heard of, but are amazing academically, amazing lacrosse wise. You watch their games and be like, oh my gosh, like
Mhm.
this is great, right? Same thing with D2 or and so on. So I think for the most part, trying to find the right academic and athletic fit is the way to go. Um, and when I tell people this, I coached a bunch of Under Armour All-Americans that went to D1 schools and never played,
Mhm.
but they were amazing and they could have played,
Yeah.
but the team had 10 Under Armour All-American Summit that they went to.
Rashad, how do you adjust to that now with the coming roster limitation, the roster caps, and the spread of the game now? How do we work to convince kids to understand that new process, because it's new to all of us, but for you guys it's new now and it's a reality. How do we get that point across? Because like you said, a roster's going to have 10 Under Armour All-Americans. There's only so many beds there's only so many jerseys they can have now, right? There's no, not beds
Yeah.
anymore, but jerseys. So how do
Yeah.
you convince a kid to accept going to maybe a mid-level D1 or an upper D2, D3 over the D1 dream? Because yeah, we all have the D1 dream, right? And of course, where we are in Florida and Louisiana, we have it's D1 or nothing, right? We all think it's, or I say we, they all think it's D1 or
Yeah.
nothing, or it is. So what do we need to do to get that mentality changed, especially now with the reality of roster caps and budgets?
The market will change it for them.
Yeah. Okay.
There's literally,
What do you mean by that?
we only have 45 spots or 42.
Yeah.
We're taking transfers in 5th years.
Yep.
You're not getting phone calls. So you're going to have to take the phone calls that you get from the D2 or D3s or the NCLAs, or you're not going to play.
Mhm.
It's really that simple. I had a friend, their daughter was transferring from one school and wanted to um, go to a big time program that probably a top 15 program. And I knew one of the coaches on the team and they were like, hey, can we find out what's going on? I called and they said, we're only taking, um, I think they said, we're bringing in 7. We're only taking, uh, 2 high school girls. The rest are going to be transferred.
Well, and with the transfer portal, I
Wow.
mean, when you think about it, when a player enters the transfer portal in college, coaches, I'm assuming, and correct me here if I'm wrong, but a coach can go into the transfer portal and be like, I need an attackman. I need a goalie. Let's see who's available. And instead of having to search hundreds or thousands of high schools and go through thousands of emails and thousands of profiles and videos, you can just hit that transfer portal, look at that player's college stats, because those are probably going to be more indicative of their performance than their high school stats. Because without knowing anything about their high school, other than, unless, maybe they come from IMG or something like that. In that case, it's like, okay, this player's probably pretty talented. But if it's just anything, like the transfer portal is not only going to save you time, it's going to make you much more efficient in your search to fill a position. Is that accurate, or am I off base here?
Um, in some cases, right? Because in some cases you look at it and they'll have a big list of everybody and you see what school
Mm-hmm.
and you click on it. You can see their stats. You can see their film because all the coaches have their film from all year. If it's a 5th year and they come from a good program, you probably know their name.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're gonna call their coach because everybody knows each other. You're gonna call um, their club coach because everybody knows each other, and you're gonna have that conversation. So it gets done pretty quick and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for some, that's how it's going to work. Um, but I just think that when it comes to that D1 love, I also don't think that people know how much time is put into it, right? So, you may, and I'm saying this from a non-traditional place, right?
Hmm.
You may have practice. Some have 5 day week practices, some have three. Some have you don't have to come. It's not mandatory when you come to practice. Some have it run by board, so some people can get away with some stuff, some can't, right? But when it's hey, like we donated this much for the tailgate, so you know what, we gotta play somebody a little bit more.
Oof.
Like
Yeah, that's
I don't
tough.
do club anymore. I can tell you.
So do
Yeah.
you think you describe, like, a lot of our listeners probably know what D1 is, and parents might be listening. Kind of for the parents out there, explain the difference between a D1 and D3 player and the education they get.
So I'll put it this way. I'll describe in a few ways. I'll describe it first in time commitment. So let's say 7 o'clock lift for D1, 8 o'clock conditioning, go grab something, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock film, 11 to 1 practice. Now you go to class.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you woke up at 5 to get to the place early, get your treatment and all that stuff so you can
Hmm.
do all that. And
Hmm.
now you go to practice. Now this is average. Right? Not every program does but that's kind of that average. Um,
That's a growing
when
norm across D1. I'm hearing too is a lot more morning practice film meets, and then just give
Hmm.
them the afternoon and the evening because the psychology, like especially with Danowski, right at Duke, his psychology was Duke's a pretty impressive school. We're right next to North Carolina, NC State, everything. The kids have every distraction in the world, so let me wear them out in the morning and the midday. That way, they're too tired to go out and get in trouble at night, and it's just an easy cycle for them. And I'm seeing a lot more of that across the D1 landscape, and truthfully across the D3 and the D2 landscape as well. It's changing for the better.
I
Not a
also would
sweep,
say,
but it's definitely
yeah,
growing.
yeah, yeah. And I also would say some of that has to go to if you're a school that has a bunch of adjunct professors and a lot of
Right.
adjuncts come at night.
Hmm.
Now your classes are at night because more of the professors come at 3, 4, 5 when they can get off
Hmm.
from doing something else.
Hmm.
Um, where a D3 would be like, hey, we don't have a strength coach, so it might be a lift on your own 3 days a week.
Hmm.
Um, Practices from 6 to 8, or you know, uh, um, or maybe later, depending on if it's off season, right? It's soccer needs a field, or there's a game, or something like that. Your 16 practices or 16 compete days during the fall before you get to your 6 days a week um, during the year, during the season. So that's kind of the big difference, the time difference. You're giving up. It's a job, and that's basic, right? That's not even talking about the kids who come in on their own to get film, the kids who stay after the shoot on their own, the kids who come in, the junkies. Um, that what I would say is the difference. A D3 player versus D1 player, I would say beauty's in the eye of the beholder, really, right? If a coach, again, you are what the Bible says you are. One coach just has to say D1 and you're D1. But I think um, speed, a lot of coaches' size, um, they're looking for a prototype size, speed. Um, and I think I would say a certain stick, um, something a little more slick. Right, fundamentals are great, but those guys that can be a little more slick with their stick and be able to handle it under pressure situations. So, um, but it's so difficult, right? Because when I coached in NESCAC, we competed against D1 schools and got kids that were going to high academic D1 school. So our team was loaded with D1 talent. It's just they wanted the um, high academics than the
Network
college life that
connections
you
in
don't,
college life.
yeah, that you don't really get
Yeah.
when you're a D1 player.
And that might be a discussion for later, like kind of breaking down the conference differences, like the D3 NESCAC versus the Mid-Atlantic conferences in D1 versus the Big Ten in D1 versus the Ivies in D1. There's also a game within the game in that level of what these kids are looking for, not just for lacrosse, but what are they looking for in life. As Rashad, it's just easy to stay in the NESCAC side. The NESCAC side, those schools are basically campus-wide fraternities, and you're connected to some serious people for a long time. If you come out of a Colby or a Bowdoin or insert your next NESCAC team, right? You're gonna have connections to some of the Fortune 500, Fortune 100, upper level law firms, things like that. So there's a lot of action, not just for the lacrosse side of it. It's all well and good to be lacrosse skilled, talented, gifted, but there's also the business, econ, pre-law,
Yeah.
poli-sci side of things in those different conferences where that's a lot of action. And I'm wondering how that's going to fluctuate. Now you talk about the market, the market's going to correct itself. How hardcore is the market? How fast is it going to go to these different angles?
I think it's going to be interesting with, you can even say NESCAC, Liberty League, right, with
Liberty, yeah.
the Skidmores and the Bouncers and the RPIs and the RITs, right? Those
Hmm.
ODAC, right? Like there's some very high academic conferences where I truly think when some of these kids that are on the cusp of D1, this is where they're gonna go to, and it's just gonna raise the level of everything. Um, I really do.
Would you agree with the statement? We had a former pro player on who was also a coach, and his kids had gone on to play. They both played NAIA, right? JP, you know what I'm talking
Yep.
about?
Yep.
Yeah, so they both played NAIA, and one of the things that he would tell them, and anytime he would talk to a group of kids, he would say, don't necessarily choose a school just because it has D1 lacrosse or it has it's your favorite lacrosse team. Choose the school for what it is academically, for the lifestyle, for the location, all those other things. And then lacrosse is the dessert, it's the bonus. If you get to play, that's awesome. But imagine you're there for a degree. And imagine, God forbid you show up and the first day of practice in the fall, your freshman year, you tear an ACL. Boom. Done for the season, probably done for the year. And now you're a full year behind when you try to go back next year and you're still recovering from this injury. And they have a whole new roster of players coming in. Plus, they have the returning roster of players who already know the offense, they already know the defense, they know the coaching staff and the structure. So you're not just one step behind as a sophomore, you're several steps behind. So if you choose a school only for the sport,
Yeah.
you might
Yeah.
you might be disappointed if you don't get to play that sport and you don't get your degree. Like the
Yeah,
whole
and
point is to get the degree.
it's another level of if you go down, do you disappear like you did in high school where some high school sports, some high school cultures, you get hurt, you're expected to not really be around, you're expected to not be a practice guy anymore. They don't see you again until you're healthy, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're kind of out of sight, out of mind. Whereas in the college world, you get hurt, you still got to show up. You got to go
Mm-hmm.
to the workouts. You got to be present. You got to be at study hall. You got to be at team meetings. You got to be at film. It's almost like you got to find a support role and fill a role so that you stay top of mind and stay in that coach's vision. Otherwise, like you said, the next class of transfers and now this new transfer rule, transfer portals, and then this new class coming in, you've got to stay top of mind. You don't get the luxury of
Mm-hmm.
disappearing, going, oh well, no, coach, I was at the AT's office. Unless they see you, they have no idea you were in the AT's office. You better be showing up to everything and keeping your grades up and staying out of trouble and doing all the right things as if you were still on the team. So there's a whole aspect of that. And JP, you're kind of asking, preparing for a D1 versus a D3. I think now that's going to be across all the divisions. I don't think that's a D1 thing anymore. I think now, because of D1's going to have their transfer window, and then D2 is going to have their second pick of the litter, and then D3 is going to have their pick of the litter versus, upper level D3, D1, going down the line. I think it's going to be the same way across the board. And if you're not committed and top of mind there, you're out, and you're yesterday's news.
Well, I think it's also important, a lot of coaches we interview, we ask them like, hey, what are you looking for in an up and coming player? Grades is like the first thing said, you know what I mean? So
always
you have that kid that's passionate about it. He's on the rebounder before and after practice. He might sleep with a stick, for God's sakes. But is he also hitting the books the same way he's, showing passion for that game to kind of look down the road further,
Yeah,
That's
grades
so
and culture is always what we talk about at these recruiting events. Is what kind of guy is he, coach? What is he? What kind of guy is he? And tell me about his parents, because that's the newest thing, the newest, most concentrated thought is. We talked about it before, John. These guys are coaching for their jobs. They're not bringing in troubled kids. They're not bringing in troublesome parents that are going to cause a problem and be a distraction to the program. These players, these rosters have to be a reflection of the coaches and the coaching staff. Otherwise, especially in this litigious world, these athletic departments and these academic institutions, they're going to get rid of a coaching staff if they're not doing the right thing, and we see it all the time.
Yeah,
we see coaches staffs be wiped off the website in less than 6 hours. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's funny. Two things with that, right? Like, I've always heard people say, like, oh, yeah, if the kid's good, but his grades aren't good, they'll find a way to get you in. It doesn't really happen as much anymore, just because coaches just don't have time to hold your hand. It's a hassle, and we can find someone with the grades that it's probably just as good. But people think it's like the old days. And then the parent aspect was at a camp, and it had like a recruiting talk a while ago, and the coach brought up about the parents, and this mom got so upset about that. Like, well, what do the parents have to do anything? Well, I can't support my kid. Like, she just got so upset.
Oh,
And I was just like, well, when your son brings a girl home, do you ask who their parents are? Why would you want to know that? Well, there's some background that you want to know, that who he's bringing into your family.
I've been through it.
So you
All that.
want to know who we're bringing into our family. And that's it's such a sensitive, like, people get so offended about that, but it's true.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, you
Well,
see it at
and
the high school level with these parent groups on these college. Oh, my son's so and so away, and he's not making any friends, and you see these things, and you're like, this has to be fake. And then you go down the rabbit hole, and you see these people who are so involved in so much. And all I do is I look at those people and I say, if your kid's going to play college ball, you don't have to pump the brakes. You have to get out of the car. You cannot do that at the college level. You have to let baby bird fly.
I will say this: there are some schools that if you email a coach, they take a bulletin board and they put the email up for all the kids to see what.
Oh, that would be
that's
mortified. I'd be
awesome.
mortified.
That
that's
is
amazing.
awesome. Can you imagine that phone call home from the kid? Mom, Dad, you have got to quit emailing my coach. Every time you do, he puts it up on the bulletin board. I can't do this again.
Would be so brutal.
I can't, Mom, Dad, I cannot answer this question.
Yeah, I don't think I can get away with that. But for the most part, you're going to have to bring families in. And so kind of what I started doing was, we have a monthly Zoom with our families. We do a weekly email telling them everything that we've done during the week, giving information. A monthly Zoom, talk to everybody. Hey, this is what's going on. you want to get something off your chest, anything like that. And I always had if you want to talk about your child's playing time, you need to give them 4 hours of your night after everything's done, because we're going to sit down with you and your child, and we're going to look over every inch of film, practice everything. We're going to show all his mistakes and where he's getting better, where he's not. And then we're going to ask the child, hey, did we discuss this and this and this? And then you have to tell me who he should be playing better than or over. And then we go over all their film. And after that 4 hours, people usually don't want to deal with that question again. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, especially when it's like they ask the kid, like, "Hey, didn't we have this meeting about this? Yeah, we did talk about that." And yeah, and once they see how detailed film study actually is, they'll only have to do that a couple times. But for the most part, everybody's been super awesome, and they just want to be part of the program. I don't think there is a way that you can just keep people out anymore. Unless you're like the top, you know what I mean? Like, unless you're like the
Yeah.
top administration is like, yeah, shut up.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear anything from anybody. There has to be some parent, you have to be able to navigate that parent engagement.
Yeah, I
So you
think
say more
I
like
think a
kill them with
healthy
information
balance.
before they get you. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
just
there's
give them the information, right, that they need. Keep them abreast of everything that's going on. Um, winning helps things a lot. Um, but yeah, hey, we have a weekly Zoom where you can talk about anything you want.
That's
We can
that's
impressive.
just,
yeah,
we can sit here and
that's a
just
great idea actually. Hey, if you want to talk to the coach, log on to my Zoom call. We do it every Thursday you could do something crazy like, hey, every Thursday at 5 a.m. I'll be here. Good luck.
we give them a good time. It's once a month. Like I said, we
Mhm.
send out an email every week, let them know, hey, this is that. But that Zoom gives you a chance to just sit there and they get to see you, they get to see you're human. Um, But I also think a lot of that doesn't happen when you have a relationship with the player and they're not just a commodity. Um, when it's just wins and losses and people feel like you're just using them for wins and losses, that's
Mhm.
when I think those kind of issues happen. But when it is, hey, this person actually or this program actually cares about my son, um, regardless, or they care about him as a person more than a lacrosse player. That's a little different.
There's a big difference I think between communication, which is a lot of times it's just back and forth versus a connection. And if you have communication, you're just talking to people and you can communicate with random strangers. But when you have a connection, you know the person and they know you, they know your family. They know what like as a coach you connect with your players and you know what classes they're taking and you might even know what classes they're struggling in and you see their relationships on and off the field. And I think there's a big difference between communicating or just communicating and connecting. And once you have the connection, then the communication just seems to flow a lot easier. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. A friend of mine says connection holds the weight of all truth. So if we have a connection, I can tell you, as a player, hey, this is what you're doing, and it doesn't that why you're not playing. It doesn't come off as hating or criticism.
Mm-hmm.
It comes off as coach cares about me. He's helping me to get to that next point, right? Same thing with
Yeah.
the parents.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought that was a good way. Like, yeah, connection holds the weight of all truth, whether it be
That's
good truth or the bad truth of why you're not playing or why you're not getting as many minutes.
that's called character building truth, coach. JP, what questions did you have for Coach Rashad? I know you were itching to ask some.
Well, I know
And
you wanted to get
you've
back to
always got some zingers.
Yeah, well, I know you wanted to go back to this one anyway, but so preparation, we kind of talked about that. You know what I mean? A little bit, kind of like, staying late, doing this, putting the extra work. But how would you tell, like, your recruiting? How would you tell them to prepare? Like, what would your advice to up and coming kids, like a kid that's in 10th grade that wants to play in lacrosse?
Yeah, I would. We'd like to make sure they see us as much as possible. And sometimes, and again, I'm not talking. This is me personally. I'm not talking Sacred Heart at all. Me personally, over my years, I've always been a little um, slower on the recruiting, just because we want to make sure we get the right person and people into the family. Um, but you know, watch games, come out for more than one visit. When you come out, you're coming to practice. Talk to the team and ask them real questions. Don't ask them the bubble stuff. So like, listen, we're up at 6 lifting and he's running and man, it's tough, but you know, um, and then a lot of it is you have to experience it, right? So if you keep playing high level leagues, high level tournaments, you kind of see the kids that are playing in those tournaments where you see how those kids move and how they play, um, how they prepare. And then once you get into the fall, that's kind of when you see the bright eyes and the big eyes for a couple of weeks. And you got to kind of reassure them that, yeah, buddy, you can do this. Just hang in there. My team has done a great job of kind of taking a little brother under their wing. They don't know anything or they think they're freaking out. Um, you're doing all right, bud. I was like this my first semester or something like that. And so, a lot of it is just baptism by fire once you get to that level. Um, I think another thing, kids think that they're going to come in and play immediately. Um, and that just doesn't happen as much as people like to think it happens, right? Um, there's only so many studs that can come in and play and stand out and be legit. Um, it takes a year to get your feet under you. Sophomore year, maybe you can get some time, and then that junior, senior year, you can start to, hey, I got my feet under this offense. I know what I'm doing. Right? So, a lot of things I would say with high school coaches, a lot of high school coaches do downtown alley fade offenses, right? The regular motion offenses. But if you look at most of your colleges, it's pairs. So pairs offense is completely different from a touchdown pop fade, 3-minute attack, rotated attack, something like that. So now I have to adjust to that. I did that before. I don't know where I'm supposed to set the kick. I don't know where I'm supposed to be dodging from. I don't know where I'm supposed to be coming from. I don't know what I'm supposed to do when I'm on the pipe. Like just different stuff like that they have to also catch up to. So, defenses, a lot of defenses in high school, they're slide from the crease, coma from behind or something like that, or crease from behind. College is a little different. They have some different packages that they get into. I went to one coach's office. He had like 100 different calls and
Wow.
packages. I was like, what are you doing? That's just too much for me to even remember. And so we're expecting kids to come from, I'll put this not even on a non-traditional, but a regular school, right? That has had the same coach for 40 years, running the same offense and the same system, and you run it since sixth grade all the way up, and now everything's changed. I think some of the kids, just have to give yourself some grace and give yourself some leeway, and to know that, yeah, I was the man here in high school, but here it's, there's grown men. I have fifth year seniors that are
Yeah.
23, 24, and I'm 17, 18. I haven't
Yeah.
had
'Cause, I
a
mean, you
real
get the
weight
kids.
program yet.
I mean, you get the
I've,
kids that come, U14, and they're like they're a good, solid player, and they step up to JV or varsity, and it's like, well, you can see them get a little overwhelmed. You know what I mean? Because now they're having to learn more of these plays. It's more technical and stuff like that. But
Little
yeah,
I
see,
always
faster, right?
liked I always like to
yeah,
tell the kids that are coming up when you're in a program where you're not going to play right away as a freshman or even a sophomore is you got to come in with the mentality you're going to be the best at this drill. You're going to be the best at this drill in practice. You're going to try to be the best at this drill in practice. You're not even trying to make the game day roster. You're trying to make the practice highlight tape so that people are saying this is the right thing to do because you have to know unless you've got the pedigree of all pedigrees, you're not going to be the guy that's coming in to suit up and wear 22 as a freshman and get on the field and they're going to call your name. You've got to get in there and you've got to learn how to do their drill. Like everybody knows the Paul Rabel story of, he shows up to Hopkins and Petramala told him you're not going to see a play on offense until you master the defense. People they think of that as an anecdotal story, but that's reality. You've got to get in there and learn the basics. You've got to learn and you've got to prove you can get to practice 15 minutes early. You've got to prove that you're going to sit up front in the film room. You've got to prove you're going to, pick up the bags or whatever you got to do, in between to show you're a team guy and a group guy. You've got to get into that drill and go 110% in every single drill and not back off of it. And I think you're talking about how do you prepare these kids, not even just for D1. I think it's for D2, D3, everything, because wherever you're going to go, there's a 25, 30-man roster above you that's already proven themselves. And you've got to come in and show them you're willing to do the work. It's like it's almost like in real life, right? You're willing to take an entry-level job, scrub the toilets, empty the trash, and do your sales work and do your computer work, whatever, and work your way up. You got to have the same mentality as a player these days. And now with these roster caps and this, everything's changing so fast. I think we have to do a better job as coaches and parents. Even if you take my coach hat off and just looking at my son, I have to do a better job of preparing him for that side in 2 years and just being ready to contribute, knowing you're not going to get a result for a year, maybe two, maybe more. And that's a hard thing, I think, for the kids, this generation. And we can go off on a terrible tangent. And I won't, but they're the immediate gratification, generation. They're the notification generation.
yeah,
If they don't get that hit of dopamine right away, they drop off the map. And I'm John JP. I know you're seeing it in practices. If I don't give my kids these days an attaboy every day, every other day, man, I lose them mentally for a week or two before they come back around. And it's one of those things. And that's something that we've had to adjust on the high school and the youth side. But I can only imagine what it's like now with the traditional way of thinking for, a D1, a Sacred Heart, a St. John's, whatever at that level. And then now with these new rules, it's got to be a whole different ball game across the board.
Okay, and I also think it comes down to like knowing, like I said, finding your role. Like our guys take pride in scout team
Right.
because when you're a great scout team and give the team the looks, you're a part of that win, right? Hey, I'm number 22 for the day. I'm going to do all kind of crazy stuff, just shoot from all angles, right? Or I'm going to give the man up team a good look today, right? And then when we stop it in the game or when we score in the game, it's like that was because our group did that. And coaches take a look at that and know and notice that, and that's a way to bump up. Hey, he's taking this
Absolutely.
with care. He's really focusing in on this. He's not looking at it like, oh, I'm just here. So, um, but I think all that changes, all that instant gratification is going to change when you start hearing the transfer story, the transfer portal horror stories, right? Like if you even look at big time college football, right? Like 1,500 kids a year are just lost into it. I'm like, oh, you think you're the big man and get a transfer somewhere, and you're just left in there with no one calling you, no one reaching out. So
And that
I do
baffles
think
me
that.
because the mental game on that side is a whole different worry because you thought you were going to go somewhere in D1 and then you got all these D2s calling you and you're like, oh, I'm not a D2 player. I'm not a D2 player. And then you miss your window And 2 weeks out of that window, you're like, you know what? Maybe I could be a D2 player. Well, guess what? It's too late. Now you're D3 or nothing. That's a great point, man. And I think that's too. You've got to. I think you guys have it more. The sports psychology side of things. There's a lot more of that coming into every level of lacrosse that can do it. I mean, we talked to Eric Rupel before, and they've had a couple of nice things at their level. But I mean, you jumping from Naps to Colby, and then now to where you are. I mean, the sports psychology side is a big angle, right? I mean, these guys they're there to care for their kids and make sure they're on the right path, and that's different, and that's something we talk about. What to ask for in recruiting? What kind of support am I going to get here? I could be coming away from 1,000 miles, 1,500 miles away from home, or down the street, right? The next train ride over. You got to know what kind of support you're going to get coming away from home, and it sounds really like you guys have the culture of that where you're at now, because we hadn't had a chance to talk about that
Yeah.
offline.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, I'll just again, and I'll say in general for people who are listening, I think you have to ask tough questions, and I think coaches like when you ask tough questions. And I always tell kids there's two people you need to talk to when you go on a campus visit, and that is the campus police and
Cooks.
the either the cafeteria staff or maintenance or the lawn service crew. They will tell you the true things of everything that goes on. They'll tell you the truth.
Yep. They don't have a
If
dog in
you,
the fight.
yeah,
It's like Breakfast Club.
campus
It's like I'm the
police will
eyes
tell
and
you the
ears of
truth.
this institution.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll tell you the truth. So if you want to know the good stuff, right, talk to them.
Yeah.
Um, Along with like you were saying earlier, like you want to find a school that fits your needs, right, for everything, not just lacrosse. Because coach may leave, right? Coach is up and leave anytime. Oh, I went for coach. Oh, he left. Oh man, I hate him. I don't like it. Um, I always tell kids to use, when my wife and I were buying our first house, we had to see about 10 houses that day. Um, and the realtor, he said, hey, if you walk into this house and you don't like it, or any house that we go to, we just turn right around. Just tell me you don't like it and we leave. He goes, don't care what it is. If you just feel like it's not the right house, we got too many houses to look at today. And he said, it's not your job to know why it doesn't feel right. It just isn't right. So if you step on a college campus and something doesn't feel right, but you just like lacrosse, well, lacrosse is going to get hard. You're going to be away from home and sad and depressed sometimes and miss the thing. There's going to be, if you're a Florida kid or a Texas kid and you're up in the north and it's going to get cold and you're going to be down a little bit. And that's when all those things that you didn't like are going to pop up.
Oh, they're going
And
to
so,
magnify. Oh, yeah.
yeah. And so for that, that's why we say, like, if you step on a college campus and you just feel it's not it, there's nothing wrong with just saying, coach, this just isn't a good fit, or I just, because a lot of times that's where the transfer comes from. I came here just for this, or I thought I could handle this, even though I didn't like this, and now I can't. Now I want to leave. So,
Man, that
I,
might be the Instagram reel soundbite from about a minute ago when he hit that one, guys.
Hmm.
That's genius. Yeah, you get on campus, something doesn't feel right. There's X number of campuses left. I mean, there's plenty of
Yeah.
Mhm.
places to go check out where you're going to feel comfortable, or a better
Yeah.
Yeah.
chance of feeling comfortable. That's amazing. That's a great perspective.
Hmm.
yeah,
Well,
I'd
this,
never used that. I never used that before. I like that.
yeah, no, that's
Stealing
good
it.
stuff. Yeah, you should. All right. Um, as we get ready to wrap this up, I just have one or two quick questions before I get to them, though. JP, did you have any more? I know you
You
had.
told me to come back to motivation. To remind you that later. You wanted to speak about that.
Yeah, how do we motivate a player, or how have you found the best way to motivate a player? And I think all of us are coaches, and so we all understand that there are different things that motivate different types of players. But what are some of the characteristics you found that your players exhibit when they show up. Like, and I've seen it too. I've gone to some of those other D1 schools, D2, D3, and the players are motivated. They run out of the locker room at practice time and they know the practice plan. They don't have to look at it, and they are ready to perform. And they are all, I mean, there's 40 some players and they are all competing for the top 10 spots.
You know, there are a few different things. I think when you've had a taste of success and you want to get back to it, that's a big motivating factor. Right? Like you won the conference, or you've been to the championship game, you've lost in the championship game, you've lost in the conference championship, or you were a game away from making it to the conference tournament. Like those type of things, those kids come back and they're hungry. You know, I always say what you tolerate, others will perceive. That's what you condone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you perceive lackadaisical play, if you tolerate it, they'll perceive it. If you tolerate errant passes, bad stick skills, not running fast, right? So everything that you emphasize. I used to tell my kids when my son, he's 16 now, but when he was first born, I was like, I have a newborn. And when he was like 2 or 3, I was like, I'm used to repeating myself. So I can repeat myself overhand all the time. I can say it all day. You're not going to do it 6 times your way or 6 times my way, then 1 time your way. You're not going to do it. I'm going to get on you every time, right? I'm going to defensively. You're not going to throw your check. I'm going to stay on you every time. Patience, patience, patience. Play and trail, right? Like we're going to. So I think that's one way. We touched on it also with the connection piece, right? Like talking to the kids outside of just what you can do for me for lacrosse. Um, Again, I've mentioned Jack Salmon like 15 times in this thing, but he would have these kids, he would give them like documentaries to watch and books to read, just different things that had nothing to do with lacrosse, and they knew like, hey, coach like actually cares about us. So
Mm-hmm.
you know
Yeah.
what? So for this 2 hours, he's always there for us. This 2 hours, I'm gonna stay in here. And but I also have to think that I also have to say that like ninth and 12th grade kids aren't 18 to 22-year-old kids that
Yeah.
may be getting money, whether it be scholarship or merit money. that we have to allow them to
Mm-hmm.
go up and down and not always fully be like they're grown college kids that are focused on that
Mm-hmm.
goal. So for me the biggest thing is just what I tolerate, I feel that others will perceive for both. And if I let anything slip, I always feel like that's what they'll know. So my teams will know that we're going to be gritty. We're going to run. We're going to work hard. We're always going to, it's going to be a fight, but just keeping that, consistency every day. And then your kids will know, man, coach is a jerk. He gets on me every time I shoot it underhand. Coach is a jerk. He gets on me every time I jog. Coach is a jerk. He gets on me every time, and then slowly it becomes, oh look, you did it my way and you scored. Oh look, you did it my way and you got the turnover. Oh look, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest compliments I ever had was I think I was at Southwestern and we played a Northeast team and the coach was like, how does your team pass so perfectly like that? The fundamentals are great. And he's like, I wish our team passed like that. And I was like, because this is what we do.
That's how we
Yeah.
allow it.
This
Yeah.
is we don't allow them to drop their hands. We have certain throws that we need. So
Mm-hmm.
just being consistent like that will take it far.
It's
I
a
think it's
fun
important.
study. Oh, go ahead, JB.
Sorry, I think it's important too, though, to have a coach that's going to motivate you. But what about the player themselves? You know what I mean? They still need to learn to motivate themselves. Like, hey, we're 100 yards away on purpose to see if they're starting to motivate each other and push forward.
And a lot of that comes with we have to. I hope you guys have time because I'll go off on tangents. So a
Part two
lot
The
of
coming.
times,
only no, we could go as long as we need. I know initially I said I wanted to keep this to like close to an hour because
We're right there.
when we start, yeah, we are. But when we go over, start getting like when people like listen to them, I start getting messages from some of the other people like, Coach, you went a little long on that podcast. But it was
But it
all
was
good
such good
stuff.
information. Yeah, like
It's
this.
all good. So
Like
anyway,
you,
yeah, we got as
once
much
you come
time
back
as you
and listen
want, but
to
yeah,
the next,
that's
come
right.
back and listen to more.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
20
right.
minutes,
No,
that doesn't work.
yeah.
no, I always have this thing about captains and how we choose captains, right? And we always pick somebody and we say, go be a captain. And then we yell at him when things aren't going right. Kid doesn't know how to be a captain.
And they have never been a
Who's
captain.
taught him? Who's taught him what you want him to do? What are the expectations? It's just, oh, are you the best player? Oh, if I give you some responsibility, you're kind of teetering around being good or bad, but I'm going to give you responsibility and let's see where it goes, right? Like we have to teach them on how to be captains that can run our program. And so what I
Hmm.
like to do in the programs, I like to have we call them captains meetings. And so everybody who thinks they want to be a captain for the first semester, they go through a weekly meeting. So we might have 5, 6 guys, and we'll always allow like an underclassmen in, even if they don't want to be a captain, so they can kind of see what we're doing. And we'll go over an article or passage, something that just keeps reinforcing what we want our program to be, or what I expect out of you, out of the captain. And so again, it's hard to be like, hey, you should be motivated yourself to do this when some of them don't have that drive yet, or there's just not that oomph to do it. Where it could be the person who does, hey, I'm going to do wall ball. I'm taking you with me. We have a rule like you can't go somewhere by yourself. Can't go to work out by yourself. Can't go to the wall by yourself. Can't go sprint
I
by
love
yourself.
that.
Can't go
I
shoot by
love that.
yourself. Have to
Yeah,
take
it's good.
someone with you. And that kind of, one of my former, well, he's an assistant coach with me, Ezra Rogers. He played for me at Beloit. He started doing sprints, him, and another, player. They started doing sprints after practice, the only two. Just 2 or 3 100-yard sprints back and forth. Started out with just them two doing 2 or 3. By the end of like 2 or 3 weeks, it was like more than half the team. Not doing a bunch of them, just 2 or 3. 100-yard sprints, down back, couple. And it just grew because they took someone with them. And that's kind of how that culture can grow.
That's what I was wondering about earlier. It's
Yeah,
like
that's right.
it's the interesting study because like where we grew up and most of us, at least in the South, on the South, it was we had coaches that said if I got to motivate you, I don't have to motivate you because there's 10 guys behind you that are motivated. So we don't have that as much anymore, and we have a different. Everybody says, oh, you can't blame the younger generation, but we do have a younger generation, a different generation that has different motivators. Not to say they're not motivated, just the way they're motivated is different, and you've got to it's an interesting play to try to figure out what motivates them, how to motivate them, how to use that and motivate them, and then how to let them do their own thing to grow, like what Rashad's saying now. Like that's just such a fun game within the game that's it's really off the field, right? Like you're trying to deal with
Yeah.
mentalities and personalities and culture. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's even with our team, like it's never just these are the captains, but then it's like, hey, someone's in charge of making sure the locker room's clean. Someone's in charge of you know, the balls that come out of practice. We don't say that you have to bring them, but they have to get out to practice, right? And uh, if there's not enough of them, you have to come to me, and we'll put more in. And someone's in charge of making sure we have attendance when we travel, and someone's in charge of making sure all the food orders, so we can get that to the person, so we can get food. And all those people are picked by the captains. So now, if they don't do right, Oh, captains, you chose them. So
Yeah,
choose wisely, right? And so, but it's also giving other guys on the team some responsibilities. So it's not just, oh, this is the captain's, that's it.
that's awesome. All right, Rashad, we're going to wrap up here. I do have one final question, then we'll get into sort of a quick closing. But what are you excited about? What are you, halfway through your season right now, or a little
Yep,
less than half?
about halfway, yeah.
About the halfway point. What are you excited about for the second half of your season? What are you looking forward to?
Excited about conference play. Some really good teams in the conference. Excited about the growth of the program. The guys won the conference last year, but it's a completely different team. They lost the offensive player of the year and some really key pieces. There's other guys who are stepping up. When the season, in the fall, when the season started, you kind of didn't know what you were going to be or who you are going to look like, and now they're growing into their confidence and who they are. So, um, I'm looking forward to that. I just love the competition, right? Like every team you play has great players. The competition is phenomenal. Um, and some days I'm just sitting there looking like, this is a really good game. Like, oh crap, I gotta coach in this thing. Like, like man, this is wow. What man, what a great cover, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh
Yeah,
I'm getting
man, what a
matter
great.
excited.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh wait, I'm gonna post this thing. Let me
yeah,
snap back into
yeah.
it. So,
There's still a job to do.
so just the competition in the in matching wits with the other teams is something that I'm excited to do with this conference. So, it was like I said, really.
I love that. All right. Thank you so much for being here. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what is the best way to do it? Whether it's Instagram, email, Facebook, what you got? What can we drop in the show notes?
Yeah, easiest way to get a hold of me is Coach Devoe on IG. Um, I am ashamed to say that I stay on my phone way too much. Too, I'm worse than the kids. So I am always on it and I always check the messages. So anything there, I'm always there.
Good deal. Well, Coach Rashad, I appreciate you being here. This has been a lot of fun, very informative, and I would love to be able to check in with you again at the end of the season as you sort of take a quick break and revamp and re-equip for the fall and the summer recruiting session if there is one for you. So, would it
There
be
is one.
okay to check in with you towards the end of this season, maybe a couple of months from now?
Yeah, no problem. I'm always here for you guys. Love it.
Awesome,
Enjoyed it so much.
awesome. Casey, any parting shots?
Nothing, man. Just always loves hanging with my boy Rashad, getting little nuggets here and there. It's always great to talk about Jack. Rashad brought Jack into my life after Jack had passed away, but I've always been really grateful and thankful that a guy like Jack can be in my life because of a guy like Rashad in my life. And I hope guys out there listening that are coaches or girls or whoever, women, men, everybody that's coaching, be somebody like that for another coach. Be that connection. Be that legacy build. Be that coaching tree branch. There's only so many of us in this game, and we need more of us, and bring them in. Rashad's a great example of a basketball guy who fell in love with lacrosse and the sixth man over 5v5. And
Mm-hmm.
and and there's more people we can bring in. Let's go get them. I mean, we're growing the game here in Lafayette. We started this week the Lafayette Lacrosse League in the 6th through 8th grade level with 79 kids this week playing lacrosse.
That's awesome.
A bunch of those
What
kids,
age?
I would say 30 of those kids picked up a stick for the first time on Tuesday, and Thursday night they played their first game of sixes. So I mean, it's awesome. We're growing. Get out there, get some coaches involved, get some new people involved, and bring them to the podcast. Let them learn, and let's build our own coaching tree.
I love that. Thanks, Casey. JP, any parting shots? Any words of wisdom for everybody?
I'm saying, well, the hardest part about being a coach is keeping this thing at 30 minutes.
No.
It's always like,
Way, dude, we are
We're
so far past that.
it's just
We're
we go
so far past that.
it's all information always. Like we could go further.
Yeah,
But
the reason he said that, Rashad, is because when he and I first started this, we started throwing this idea around. What was it? like May or June of 2024 or something like that. And we're just like, listen, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. We're just going to like, these will be easy, short, like 20, 30-minute episodes. Oh, forget it. You get a couple of guys talking lacrosse, you're going to be here for a while. So,
long form content is good.
Yep. We love it. So listen, everybody, thank you so much for being here. And for everybody tuning in, once again, thank you so much for joining us on the First City Lacrosse podcast. You can find us at any time on social media. It's at First City Lax. That's 1ST, City Lax. You can also email us here, John, Jon, at firstcitylax.com. And you can find us on anywhere you find your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, wherever. We try to put new episodes out every week. As the season is progressing, we might have to back down to one every other week, but we're gonna get caught up. And we are so grateful for your continued loyalty and support, and we can't wait to see and hear all the great things about all of your players. With that being said, Coach Casey, Coach Rashad, Coach JP, we will see you all next time. All right, guys, get your reps in. Be a good human. Peace out. We will see you.
If you like what you hear, drop us a like and follow wherever you downloaded this podcast from, and on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at First City Labs. Check back every week for more content. Thank you for being a part of the First City Lacrosse podcast.